going to talk about extracting a brain from an MRI scan of a rat's head. So in our code, we started by downloading the middle slice only of the scan because it's usually very easy to analyze and the brain is usually very prominent in that slice. We also downloaded the middle slice of an already extracted brain that we found on the net. After that, we used cross-correlation between our middle slice and the already existing middle slice to find where the brain approximately is in our scan. Using the cross-correlation center, we expanded on that area so that we can crop out or zero out everything around the brain. Our assumption was that the brain will always be inside the cropped area. We started a for loop where we went through the scan slice by slice and we did image processing to extract the brain individually. First of all, we converted each slice into unsigned int, which is much easier to manipulate, where the intensities are out of 256. Then we used local contrast, which is an already existing MATLAB function. This is because the brain is almost always brighter than the rest of the image, so we hoped that this would increase the brightness of the brain compared to the rest of the image. Next, we used an averaging filter, and this works to smooth the edges in the image. After that, we used IM opening, which is a morphological process that dilates and then erodes. What that means is, first of all, we added gaps between objects in our image, and then we filled in the objects so that they're not smaller by size, so we preserved the size of the objects in our image. Next, we calculated the average brightness of the slice, and we used that number to binarize, which means we use that number as a threshold to choose which pixel is going to stay white and which pixel is going to be turned into black. So the resulting image is going to be a black and white logical image. Next, we filled all the holes, which means that, for example, if there was one pixel in the middle of an object that was black, we turned that pixel into white.
Now that we have a binarized image, we have an image that is filled with many objects, and one of them is the brain. And in the next section, what we do is we identify which one is the brain. And how we do that is we use this function right here, these functions right here, to basically identify which one is closest to the center. And the way we get the center point is from the cross correlations that we did earlier. Using that center point that we calculated with the cross correlations, we're able to find the distance of each object in the binarized image and find which one is closest to the centroid, which is the center point resulting from the earlier cross correlation. And after we identify which one is the closest, we then eliminate all other objects and only leave a black and white object in the center, which as a pattern will be the brain most of the time. In this section, we continue processing by scanning for errors in the slice. We do this by first taking the now isolated black and white brain object picture that we have from the last section, and we count up all the pixels in the object. And then what we do is we check to see if the amount of pixels is over 150% of the amount from the previous slice. And if that is true, then we go through this section where we check, where we identify that the slice has an error, and then we do a little morphological processing to somewhat minimize the error a bit so that it's less noticeable in the final product.
Each slice inside the for loop is processed and the brain is extracted. We add them all together in a huge matrix which we call brains. This matrix is then saved out as a DICOM file which can be opened and visualized in other software such as MyPav. Next, we created a small line of code where we compared this semi-automatic method to a manual method that we have previously done, and we counted how many slices were perfectly extracted and how many slices had errors. At the end, this method had a 6.5% of error, which is acceptable.
The program was completed as a final project for multimedia systems design at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. It was completed by David Connolly, Zachary Mead, and Fatima Sabai in collaboration with Dr. Dongming Pen from UNL and Dr. Yutong Liu from UNMC.